Silence is often mistaken for strength. We believe that by keeping our emotions locked inside, we are somehow protecting ourselves. But the reality is silence doesn't protect, it isolates. Every time you choose silence over expression, you build a wall between yourself and the people around you. And over time, those walls become too high, too thick, and too impossible to break down. Think about the last time someone hurt you, but you said nothing. Maybe it was a friend who ignored your struggles. Maybe it was a partner who failed to show up when you needed them the most. Maybe it was a boss who overlooked your efforts, leaving you feeling invisible. You wanted to speak, but you convinced yourself that staying quiet was the better option. You thought, they should know how I feel. You assumed they would see your pain. But did they? Here's the hard truth. People are not mind readers. We expect others to understand our silence, to interpret our unspoken emotions, to pick up on the pain we refuse to express. And when they don't, we feel abandoned. But the truth is, we abandoned ourselves first. Silence creates distance, not because others stop caring, but because they don't even know there's a problem. And when there's distance, connection suffers. Relationships become strained, misunderstandings multiply, and before you know it, you feel disconnected even from the people you love the most. Think about it. How many friendships have fallen apart not because of a single fight, but because of unspoken words? How many relationships have withered because neither person was willing to be vulnerable? How many families have been broken not by one big event, but by years of silence, years of bottled up feelings, of unexpressed love, of words that should have been said but never were? Silence doesn't just create distance in personal relationships, it affects every aspect of life. In your career, your silence can cost you opportunities. You sit in meetings with ideas burning inside you, but you don't speak up. You watch colleagues get promotions while you remain unnoticed. Not because you aren't talented, not because you aren't capable, but because you chose to stay silent when you should have raised your voice. In friendship, silence creates resentment. You expect your friend to check in on you, to ask how you're doing, to notice when you're struggling, but you never tell them that you need them. And when they don't show up in the way you expect, you feel betrayed. But was it really betrayal, or was it just unspoken expectations? In love, silence is deadly. You hold back your emotions thinking it will prevent conflict. You swallow your feelings assuming they will disappear. But emotions don't fade when ignored, they fester. The words left unsaid become the silent killers of intimacy. The longer you stay quiet, the farther apart you and your partner drift, until one day you wake up next to someone who feels like a stranger, wondering how you got there. The problem is we are taught that silence is the safer choice. We are conditioned to believe that expressing our emotions is risky, that vulnerability means weakness, that speaking up invites rejection. So we stay quiet. We convince ourselves that if we just wait long enough, things will get better on their own, but they don't. Because silence is not a neutral act, it's a decision. And that decision has consequences. Over time, silence turns into loneliness. You start to feel unseen, unheard, unimportant. You begin to wonder if you even matter. And that feeling, it's not because people don't care. It's because you never gave them the chance to show they do. But here's the thing. The people who love you want to know what's inside you. They want to understand your thoughts, your feelings, your struggles. But they can't do that unless you let them in. Imagine if instead of staying silent, you chose to express yourself. Imagine if you told your friend, I feel like I'm the only one putting effort into this friendship. Imagine if you told your partner, I miss the way we used to talk. Imagine if you told your boss, I want to take on bigger challenges. Would it be uncomfortable? Maybe. Would it feel risky? Probably. But would it open the door for connection, for understanding, for change? Absolutely. Because silence creates emotional distance. But speaking, no matter how difficult, creates bridges. There is a powerful difference between begging and silence. One is an action, The other is an absence of action. One is an effort to change the situation. The other is a passive acceptance of suffering. Most people believe that begging, asking for help, for attention, for understanding, is weak. They think that needing something from others means they have lost control. But the truth is, begging means you are still fighting. It means you still believe there is hope. Silence, on the other hand, is surrender. It is the moment you stop believing that anything can change. It is when you decide, whether consciously or unconsciously, that your needs no longer matter. It is not an act of strength. It is an act of giving up. When you beg, whether for love, for support, for help, you are making it clear that you refuse to disappear. You are choosing to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged. That is not weakness. That is survival. Imagine someone drowning in a river. Their lungs are filling with water. Their body is growing weaker, but they still have one choice. They can scream for help, or they can let the current take them. The person who screams, the person who reaches out a hand and fights to stay above water is not weak. They are alive. They are refusing to let go. They are demanding a chance to survive. But the person who stays silent, who lets the water consume them without a sound, that is surrender. That is when the battle is truly lost. This applies to every area of life. In relationships, begging might look like asking your partner to meet you halfway. It might mean saying, "I need you to talk to me," or "I feel alone." It might mean being vulnerable enough to say, "I love you, but I don't feel loved in return." Silence, on the other hand, looks like pretending you don't care. It looks like acting fine when you're not. It looks like letting the distance grow between you and the person you love, simply because you are too afraid to ask for more. In your career, begging might mean asking for an opportunity, a raise, or a mentor. It might mean saying, "I deserve to be recognized," or "I need guidance to improve." It might feel uncomfortable, it might make you feel exposed, but it is an action, it is a step forward. But silence is sitting in the same position for years, watching others move ahead while you stay behind. It is accepting that your hard work will go unnoticed because you never spoke up for yourself. It is watching your potential go to waste because you refuse to ask for what you deserve. In friendships, begging could mean reaching out when you feel forgotten. It could mean texting first, even when you're tired of always being the one to do so. It could mean saying, "I feel like I'm the only one putting effort into this friendship. Do you still care?" It is uncomfortable, yes, but it is an attempt to repair the connection. Silence, on the other hand, is when you let the friendship die in silence. It is when you decide that since they haven't reached out, you won't either. It is when you sit in the pain of feeling ignored, but say nothing, do nothing, and eventually lose the friendship altogether. Most people fear rejection more than they fear regret. They stay silent because they don't want to hear no. They don't want to be told they aren't enough. They don't want to face the possibility that what they want might not be given to them. But here's what they don't realize. Silence doesn't protect you from rejection. It only guarantees it. When you ask, when you beg, you at least create the possibility of getting what you need. There is a chance. It might be a small chance, but it is real. But when you stay silent, when you never express your needs, the answer is already no. Not because someone denied you, but because you denied yourself. Pain is inevitable. Every single person in this world carries wounds. Some from childhood, some from heartbreak, some from failure, some from betrayal. But pain itself is not what destroys people. What destroys them is their refusal to express it. When pain goes unspoken, it doesn't disappear. It doesn't fade into the background. It doesn't quietly leave your body. Instead, it buries itself deeper. It takes root inside you, spreading through your mind, your emotions, your body. What starts as a single moment of hurt turns into something much bigger, something that shapes your decisions, your relationships, and even your sense of self-worth. Think of a wound. If you leave it untreated, it doesn't heal, it festers, it gets infected, and the longer you ignore it, the worse it becomes. Emotional pain works the same way. When you refuse to speak about it, when you bottle it up, when you pretend it doesn't exist, it doesn't go away. It manifests in other ways. It turns into anxiety, into anger, into resentment. It turns into destructive habits, into addiction, into self-sabotage. It affects the way you see yourself and the way you interact with others. How many times have you convinced yourself that you're fine when you're really falling apart? How many times have you smiled through your pain, telling everyone you're okay because you don't want to seem weak? How many times have you swallowed your emotions, hoping that if you ignore them long enough, they will stop hurting? But they don't. They stay. They grow. They shape the way you move through the world. People who never express their pain start living in survival mode. They build walls around themselves, thinking it will protect them from further hurt. They become guarded, distant, unable to let people in. They convince themselves that vulnerability is dangerous, that trusting others will only lead to more suffering. But in doing so, they imprison themselves. They become trapped inside their own minds, replaying the same painful memories over and over again. They isolate themselves from the very people who could help them heal. They convince themselves that no one would understand, that no one would care, that their pain is theirs to carry alone. And yet, if they would just speak, if they would just let those words out, even in the smallest way, they would start to free themselves. Because the moment you put pain into words, it loses its grip on you. Think about the times you've held something in for so long, only to finally say it out loud and feel the weight lift from your chest. It's not because the pain itself disappeared, it's because you no longer had to carry it alone. Speaking your pain doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. But too many people are afraid of being judged, afraid of being misunderstood, afraid of burdening others, so they stay silent. They keep everything inside, hoping it will resolve itself, hoping time will do the work for them. But pain that is not processed does not heal. It hardens. It turns into bitterness. It turns into a constant low-level sadness that never really goes away. This is why so many people struggle in their relationships. They bring past wounds into new connections without even realizing it. A childhood of feeling unloved turns into an adulthood of fearing intimacy. A past betrayal turns into an inability to trust. A deep-seated feeling of unworthiness leads to settling for less than they deserve. And all of this happens because they never faced their pain. They never spoke it into existence. They never allowed themselves to process it, to move through it, to release it. Pain demands to be acknowledged. It will make itself known, one way or another. If you refuse to talk about it, it will show up in your actions. It will show up in your self-doubt, in your hesitation to love, in your inability to take risks, in the way you push people away. But here's what most people don't realize. Pain is not meant to be carried alone. We are wired for connection. We are meant to share our burdens. We are meant to lean on each other, to be seen, to be understood. But none of that can happen if we stay silent. So pain remains a prison, not because it has to be, but because we make it one. Your voice is more than just sound. It is more than words strung together in conversation. Your voice is your power, it is your identity, it is your ability to shape the world around you, to demand what you deserve, to connect with others in a way that silence never could. Yet, too many people go through life without ever fully using it. They hesitate, they hold back. They convince themselves that their words don't matter, that their opinions are insignificant, that their needs are unimportant, and in doing so, they give their power away. Think about the times you had something to say, something that burned inside you, something you knew was important, but you chose to stay silent. Maybe it was at work when you had an idea that could have changed everything, but you convinced yourself it wasn't good enough. Maybe it was in a relationship when you needed more, when you felt neglected, but you chose to swallow your feelings instead of expressing them. Maybe it was a moment of injustice when you saw something wrong, but didn't speak up out of fear of what others would think. What happened after those moments? Did staying silent make things better? Did it bring you peace? Or did it leave you feeling small, powerless, stuck? Because every time you silence yourself, you send a message, not just to others, but to yourself. You tell yourself that your voice doesn't matter. You reinforce the belief that it's safer to shrink than to stand tall. And over time, that belief becomes a part of you. But here's the truth. Your voice has the power to change everything. It has the power to shift your relationships, to heal wounds, to open doors, to inspire, to demand respect, to create opportunities where none existed before. Look at history. Every great movement, every revolution, every shift in society began with someone using their voice. The world didn't change because people stayed silent. It changed because someone, somewhere, had the courage to speak, to challenge, to demand something better. And if that is true on a large scale, imagine how true it is in your personal life. Imagine what would happen if you stopped holding back. If you walked into that meeting and said, I have an idea that could make a difference. If you told your partner, I need you to hear me. I need you to understand what I'm feeling. If you told a friend, I've been struggling and I don't want to carry this alone anymore. The moment you start speaking, you take back control. You stop being a passive participant in your own life and start actively shaping your reality. Your voice does more than just communicate. It commands presence. It tells the world, I am here. I matter. What I have to say is important. But too many people are afraid of confrontation, afraid of rejection, afraid of not being good enough, and so they stay quiet. But silence doesn't protect you. It doesn't keep you safe. It doesn't shield you from pain. It only ensures that you remain unseen, unheard, unrecognized. Because when you don't use your voice, others will use theirs for you. They will define your worth. They will decide your path. They will assume what you need, what you want, who you are. And if they get it wrong, if they misunderstand you, if they underestimate you, you have no one to blame but yourself. No one will ever fight for your needs the way you can. No one will ever understand your dreams the way you do. No one will ever advocate for you unless you teach them how. And the only way to do that is by using your voice. Your voice is your ticket to a better life. It is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It is the key to unlocking everything you've ever wanted, but it only works if you use it.